Hey, everybody. Welcome. I'm so excited. I'm Charli Matthews, and I am the CEO of Empowering Brands. I am always excited when I get to talk to the pump industry. And today we're going to talk about energy management and IoT. And I have some really special guests that I am going to bring on. And I also want you as a member of the audience to contribute. So we'll start this right now. Go ahead and put in the chat, where you're from. What do you think about when we talk about energy management or IoT? And I'll go ahead and we'll get started with our panelists introducing themselves. So Mike, I'll start with you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mike McClurg. I run marketing for Load Controls. We're a manufacturer of sensors and controls for the fluid handling industry. We measure power, essentially, how much work the motors are that are driving your pumps. We've got about 150,000 of those out in the world today at all sizes of companies. And I also started a company called Ability last year to develop Internet of Things devices for this exact market, trying to unlock data that's in some of these manufacturing environments for better data analytics. So happy to be here today.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. Patrick, do you want to go next?
Yeah, hello, I'm Patrick Hogue. I'm the Director of Marketing at Nidec US Motors. So I cover a lot of industrial motors, but we're working on and really focused on system engineering, right? How to identify inefficiencies and how can we use IoT to help our motor run and, fix these inefficiencies. So I've spent a lot of time in the pump industry, and I've done everything from dishwashers to 5,000 horsepower units that go in wastewater. So I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, and I'll say, just if y'all haven't seen it yet, to go over and check out Empowering Pumps and Equipment's digital magazine this month. Patrick is on there with Nidec, and he's featured. He really goes into his story about being a young engineer in this space and how that leads to innovation, which I think is amazing. So just had to give you an extra shout out there, Patrick. Okay, let's go to Andrew.
Good morning, everyone. Andrew Barco. I'm the Director of Automation for Y-Meter. And typically when you think of Y-Meter, we kind of think of the machinery space, but we're actually very big in the process and pumps world. Of course, we have a whole bunch of customers in the water, wastewater, and other process industries. And we have quite a few possibilities and products that can transition from the machinery world, where it's high speed, high volume type of information, into the pump world. And we're excited to share those thoughts and the tidbits of tricks that we do.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so I am going to go to Gary next.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm Gary Wong with OSI Soft, and I lead our global water business. OSI Soft software company. We make the Pi system, been in business for 40 years, and we deal in real-time operational intelligence and analytics. So obviously pumping is one of those major assets that we all look at in the water wastewater industry. And I think we can do so much more. So really glad to be here and talking with everyone today.
Awesome. Thank you, Gary. And then we have Mo. Mo, you want to tell us who you are, what you do, and kind of, what do you think about energy management and IoT? What comes to mind?
Charli, it's a pleasure to be here, and I did my best to color code, so thank you for matching the red. But hey, thanks for the opportunity to be here today. My name is Mo. I'm an industrial engineer. I've been in the industry for about 22 years. I worked in automotive, actually, for half of my career, and then the other half I worked as a consultant and technology provider to manufacturing. My organization, IoTco, is the Internet of Things company. I'm a managing partner responsible for technology and delivery. And we focus on using data coming from pumps and other devices to provide predictive analytics with a vision of a zero downtime operation, actually. Our vision is very simple. We like to say zero downtime, zero defects. But it's a journey. It takes time to get to that level. And then you need solutions like OSI, you need folks like the people on the panel to make sure that you capture the data and you analyze the data. So I do appreciate the opportunity to be here today, Charli, with the panel.
Thank you for being here. And I want to let you know that we had Dylan, the millwright, who was going to be able to join us as well as a panelist, and he had an outage that he had to go take care of. So he did add, and I'll give some feedback on what he came up with as far as some of these questions I'm going to ask. But I also wanted to invite our partner, Deepak, if you'll jump in here and introduce yourself and kind of tell us about what you've got going on there. A great big launch last week. And so I just wanted to give you a chance to talk as well.
Yeah, thanks, Charlie. I'm Deepak Sivanandan. I am heading marketing at Flowserve Corporation. Many of you know Flowserve is a leader of pumps, valves, and seals. The launch that we are talking about is happened last week. It's Red Raven that we launched. It's our IIOT platform that we brought to market. So for Flowserve has more than 250 years of experience in pumps, and there is so much of knowledge that we have about pumps, and we know there is so much of data that is built into these pumps that we can tap into, and if we can use that data to provide some analytics and some insights on how the product, the assets are performing in the field to our customers, there is a lot of value that we can get out of it, and that's what Red Raven is all about. I'm happy to talk more about Red Raven, but I'm really excited about how we are now able to get into the digital space and provide customers with the inside knowledge that they need in order to increase their uptime, reliability, and safety of their field workers. So again, thanks for the opportunity, and I'm happy to share more as we discuss.
Awesome. Okay, so that was, I guess, an introduction to this new technology, emerging technologies. I want to hear from our panelists, and for the people who are here that are in the audience, we're just using the chat to kind of tell who we're from, where we're from, who we are, and then also I want you to answer these questions too. So as we go through, don't hesitate. You're part of this as well. But if you'll put that in the chat. Becca is going to be helping us with that. Becca, before we jump too far in, I want to introduce you. Rebecca is the Director of Empowering Pumps and Equipment, and she's been putting together all these things. Becca, you want to say hello?
Hey, everybody. Like Charlie said, I work for Empowering Pumps and Equipment. I will be helping Charlie today with questions. If you have questions, I'll make sure that I feed those to everybody. So certainly put those in the chat. If I miss anything, you can certainly just send it directly to me and I'll make sure that it gets done. And thank you all for being here.
Thanks, Becca. Okay, so we started talking a little bit about this new technology with Red Raven, but I wanted to jump into and ask the panel, okay, what have you seen as far as new and emerging technologies? What is out there right now? And I'm going to, because I can't see everyone right now, you can just jump in. I see Mo is smiling, so I'm going to give him the floor first so I can see some of you. But go ahead, Mo. Do you see anything, or do you want to talk to that?
Thank you, Charlie. I'll try to smile less so you don't force questions on me. But,
that's right. That's right.
But so, I mean, the field is really evolving for several reasons, right? Sensors and hardware is getting cheaper. Computational speeds are getting faster. Cloud storage is abundantly available. So some of these things have accelerated the pace of implementation and has allowed companies like Flowserve to actually innovate and come up with products, and the vendors to come up with products, and manufacturers to kind of require these products on their factory floors. And what I see in the market today is I would put it in three buckets. I would say there's a connected asset approach, where you have critical assets within the manufacturing floor that require sensors, require analytics. There's also a connected product strategy. Folks who manufacture things like pumps, and they sensorize the pumps in the field, and they use it to provide, new service revenue models to their end customers. And the third piece, which maybe we can talk about later, is around connected worker, actually. How can the worker and the user be immersed further into doing their job better? And that's not an easy task, actually. Sometimes we think technology, but we're missing the human aspect of it. And I like to say people, process, technology, and your weakest link is as far as your benefits will accrue, right? You have the best technology out in the world, but sometimes the people are unable to use it, so it doesn't deliver value for the business. So that's what
so much there. Yeah, so much there. Gary, I want to ask you what you've seen in the market as well.
Yeah, well, I really agree with a lot of what you've said, and it's really a journey. So I happen to be also the chairman for SWAN America's Alliance, Smart Water Networks Forum, and I see a lot of different technologies, and definitely sensors, remote monitoring is absolutely out there, and it's growing exponentially. So you see a lot more solutions. I like to kind of call them, solutions as a service, where you could be a pump manufacturer, you could be in the real-time water quality world, and you're providing solutions to basically light up areas where in our water business we might not have any visibility in the past, right? A lot of remote locations, it could be in the collection system. So sensors, remote monitoring, and of course, all the water analytics that go around that. So a lot of new technology out there.
So Andrew, I'm going to call on you since you have some of this new technology, right? Tell us a little bit about what you have seen.
Absolutely. I mean, what we see in the water industry as well as in the process industry is IoT means a whole lot to different people. It could be as much as someone going from a clipboard to something that they've all of a sudden now got a permanent connection with an Ethernet, all the way going back to your to the DCS system or to the PLC, or even just putting a PLC or a sensor out there. So what we try to do, at least in our world, is look at it from a whole gambit, from the guys who have absolutely nothing to the guys who have something and just want to take it to the next level. And that involves things like wireless connectivity as a start, or a wired connection, doing some analytics on site if required, or even just putting a sensor into an existing pump or into an existing system that's there without having to retrofit.
Just a second, let me pause him. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Okay, so go ahead.
Yeah, so just trying to make it simple for the end user, for the customer. Not having to redo everything, because we found a lot of times when we talk to our customers or to plants or to anybody else about IoT, there's this big scary world of, I got to change everything. I got to change the way people do things. I got to change their mindset. I got to do a whole bunch of stuff. And we try as much as possible not to do that. Keep it simple, keep it easy, and be a nice little walk-in. For some of our customers, it's crawling instead of walking. But of course, it's always easier to have someone who's already walking.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're going to get to, is looking at all these different things. Mike, if you want to comment there on just what you've seen in the industry. I know you're kind of taking your products there to the next level as well, at Load Controls, if you want to talk to that.
Yeah, I think the first thing is, and the thing that's so exciting about this is a huge problem, that when people look at their energy bills, what they spend on keeping their pumps running, it's a huge percentage. It's 40% of their electric bill. It's 25% of their overall expense line. So it's a huge problem worth solving. And Mo mentioned some interesting technologies, and we'll get into them. But the thing that we're finding really fun about this transformation of us and our customers is it sort of changes the perspective from real-time operating my facility, my process, to looking at it over time. And that's the thing that some of these technologies have changed, which is now it's cheap to save the data. It's cheap to analyze the data. It's very easy to spin up environments to look at this, where you don't have to buy servers and buy software. You can do this in a matter of minutes for really pennies. And that's really changing the way people are looking at their data and their process, and the potential for this data that, when it's used for real time, is important for running their operations. But if you keep it and you analyze it, can open up new insights into energy conservation opportunities, predictive maintenance opportunities. So we think it's a really cool intersection of a real important need and some new technologies that are enabling it.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. Patrick, I want to ask you, since, when I think of pumps and then I see motors right next to that, drives, etc. And everybody keeps talking about kind of sensors and connected pumps. And then I can't wait to talk about the people, Mo. Thanks for bringing that up. But Patrick, how do you see this like in your everyday right there at NEDEC?
So I think a lot of these people are, everybody on the panel is talking about different components, right? And they've kind of mentioned it and broached it, but the idea here is how do we get all these components to work together as a system? And in a daily life, we all see it as how do I get my motor to understand what speed to run to get this pump to output exactly what's needed so I don't have these inefficiencies of wasted water, wasted energy. So I think with all of these new technologies, there's so many of them to talk about. The key overarching this is how do we put them together and make sure we're getting this closed loop system that says we're going to give out or we're going to output exactly what's needed so that we get the perfect amount of efficiency here. So I think that's the key there. And I work, and we all work in that every day, is how do we get these technologies to interact and interact well?
Yeah, and I think that's the question that I want to go to next is how do we get started? How, first we have to understand what all this is. So hopefully once we're done with this session, we'll all know a little bit more and be on a better page together. But how does somebody get started if they're trying to, embrace energy management, energy savings, or IIoT? Patrick, you want to start?
Yeah, and I think I kind of asked a bunch of guys in my area, at NEDEC about these questions before I came on here just to get a better understanding. And one of the best questions or answers that came back on this one was ask for help. If you don't understand it, if you don't know about it, go and ask for help. Do some research. Say, how can I use these things to help my system? How can I put this on a pump? How can I put this on a motor? What does a gateway mean? How do I, where does this data go when it goes to the cloud? How do I get it back? What are you guys talking about? What are these terms? Just ask for help and start digging down there and understanding.
That's such a great point, and runs true to Patrick in his philosophy of life to ask. Mike, do you want to jump in next?
Yeah, I think, that was sort of the initial conversation you and I had around this was, how can we come together as an industry and make this simpler to consume? How can we create solutions that are open enough that people can add value to them and participate in them, but also where we're cooperating and working together, just so people don't have to develop everything from scratch. And I think it's good for us as participants in the industry to be perceived as, hey, we're in this together to lower your energy bills and to make this easier to consume. And there are a lot of great technologies out there, and we're going to look at how those can be implemented into a solution that in the end, it needs to add value to our customers and to you. And so us working together can only be good for that. So I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah. And so to the point, we had the conversation, right? We wanted to, expand our knowledge and bring in these panelists together and talk about it. One panelist that couldn't make it because she was at a conference, Jen Muir, if you haven't met her, please reach out to her. She is, I guess, the first person where I heard her do a presentation about energy management and like looking at your bill. And I'm like, utilities have bills, like it didn't really I didn't see them the same way as I see kind of my personal bill. And so I think it's having that conversation and understanding where we can look for ways to save, look for technologies to use. Okay, enough from me. Andrew, do you want to jump in here?
Sure. I mean, what we kind of see as well, I agree 100% with both Mike and with Patrick on this one. When we start the conversation with customers, our first question is usually, what do you guys want to do? Like, what's your end game? And their end game might be very far from where they are now. And the second thing is, how much are you willing to change? Are you willing to change the way you do your entire process? Are you willing to redo the way things are, the way shifts are? Like, what are our constraints over here? And yeah, asking for help is a big thing. And a lot of times we will bring in partners of ours, whether it's system integrators or someone else as well, where okay, how do we work through this together to get to what the customer needs to do? We can implement all the software we can possibly think of, but if it totally misses what the customer's point is, it's not a very successful implementation. So that's how we kind of work with everyone and people on this panel as well to make it a good thing.
Yeah, and so I want to just point out something, and thank you, Becca, for reminding me to say this again for our audience that is here. This is your chance to ask the question. You can ask it to our panelists now in the chat. You can, put it there, and if there's not an answer, it gives us something to talk about later, something to find out for you. So I encourage you to do that. If you want a private message, you don't want it to send it to everyone, you can send it to Becca, and she'll relay that message. Okay, so Gary and Mo, I'm going to go to Mo first because I have heard him talk about kind of these startups and different people kind of getting into IIoT. So if you'll start and tell me, how does it look when somebody is, trying to get started?
I think that's a great question, Charlie, and I listened carefully to the panel, and I think education is a key part of it, which Patrick started to allude to. But I would also say technology is secondary to the actual business case. I think it's important to start with the why, not the how. Unfortunately, one of the key reasons why some of these things fail and do not scale is the business case and the justification. Pilots happen, and then they go into what some call, quote unquote, pilot purgatory. They get stuck, you extend the pilot, you think you're succeeding, it still doesn't work, right? So my message to everyone trying to do this is, what is your ROI and how can you track it? Are you improving uptime? Are you reducing quality issues? Are you improving spare parts? Do you want to improve your mean time to repair, your mean time between failures, right? So what is your ROI? And I think if an ROI justification is conducted properly, and I think if you start at the right place with the right assets, with the right team, I think you'll be very successful. So my message is, do an assessment, understand your maturity, understand your ROI, and then embark on your journey, and you'll be very successful.
Oh, that made me think of all the assets that you have to know about before you can get started on implementing some of this, right? It's okay, what is even in the plant? What do you even have? So that assessment of that. Gary, did you have something to add here?
Sure, yeah. So let's assume we know what the business issues are, and today we're going to talk a lot about energy and the cost of that. So there's a lot of opportunity there. So assuming that's all taken care of, we've already started on the whole IoT or IIoT journey. I say that because before IoT, a lot of these organizations have SCADA systems, automation systems, PLCs. So there's already a lot of instrumentation in place, and they have the ability to control their process. What's happened now in the past, say, 5 years is with the industrial Internet of Things, it's more of these sensors and these solutions that actually sit outside of your traditional SCADA or automation system. So that data now is, like I mentioned earlier, kind of like lighting up areas we couldn't see before, maybe very remote locations. That data now is going directly into the cloud most of the time. So it does bring that challenge of trying to integrate that data that's now sitting in the cloud. It could be on-prem somewhere or right at the edge. And we're seeing a lot more technology where there's a lot more analytics and processing at the edge, say right at the pumps. So you're using the data there, for example, to then change the way you operate your pump schedules, for example. So that integration is really important, and that, of course, that's something that we deal with every day. And I think the opportunity is to do a lot more with your data that you have now. And you kind of hear that data rich, information poor, because that integration of data is very difficult for a lot of people without having the right technology in place. There's just so many disparate systems, so many different vendors. And that's great in many aspects because you have a lot of fantastic solutions that can address these business issues that we're talking about. But at the end of the day, to get a holistic view, you really need to have a handle on managing your data in order to be able to use it effectively.
Yeah, so there's so much there. I want to I want to talk a little bit about that. Okay, you have all this data and then you have to be able to interpret it. And I think, okay, they have to understand the system. So we were talking about, connecting the whole system. How do you get that education that you need to be able to, use all these different products, all of this knowledge, all the data, and interpret it? Is it, and I also want to know, what segments do you think in the, fluid space or the, pump industry, I like to call it, what industries are going to be able to embrace this first? And part of it is, are they going to be able to educate, their teams? Is it, overwhelming amount of data because of all the different assets? Like, what do you see as kind of the first segments to adopt this, which they would be doing now, right? And which ones do you see kind of moving forward that are going to be able to do this more efficiently? Gary, go ahead.
Sure. So, at OSI Soft, we talk about that whole real-time data infrastructure. So having data in a single repository that allows you to see anything from the edge to on-premise all the way up to the cloud. So it becomes ubiquitous in terms of your data, that one source of the truth. So that means, of course, being able to talk to a lot of different manufacturers. Say, there's many different pump manufacturers. There could be software models in place, digital twins. There's a lot of not only people, but systems need that kind of data. So having that all in place, that real-time data infrastructure allows you now to see that holistic picture. So if I look at the water industry, I see great opportunity. So we're talking about energy management and pumping, for example. But what if we had, upstream and downstream of that? So if I know what my power costs are, I might have time of use rates, I might have demand response rates. And if I knew, for example, how much water I need to produce in terms of water demand, from those perspectives, now I can decide when to pump, how much water to pump, right? And where are the locations I need to pump to, right? So right away, from that perspective, now you see, a much more holistic view, and you can start making smarter decisions. But it is based on a lot of different data points that come from many different silos. So having that data integrated is really important. Otherwise, again, you're just looking at kind of like siloed areas, right? And it doesn't, you're not looking across that, let's say, the water value chain.
So Gary comes from water, and they're definitely implementing that now, and we can see that. And I think the system may be understood. I'll just ask the panelists if y'all want to jump in. If you have seen this in an industry, what segments have you seen this working? Anybody want to jump in there?
I mean, very quickly, I can say safety critical industries are usually most mature just because they have to do it. So when there is heavily safety concerns and regulatory concerns, you will find data-rich environments. But in some of the industries where I play, for example, automotive, aerospace manufacturers, pumps are there to do a job, but they're not considered safety critical, although some of them may be uptime critical to the process. You have a pump that's running a machine tool, the machine tool is making an aerospace part. And if that pump goes down, the whole machine's going to go down. So I think that goes back to the ROI conversation. So I do see data richness in industries that mandate it by kind of obviously or naturally, like safety critical industries and uptime critical industries.
Awesome. Anybody else have something to add there?
Yeah, I would echo that also. We see that a lot of our interest and uptake in highly regulated, safety critical industries. I keep hoping that from a skill set and industry perspective and adoption perspective, that the microbreweries will get on board with this much more quickly, because I'm interested in doing some more hands-on research in that space. But I think, those are the types of people in industries that are attracting a new generation of people responsible for manufacturing processes that we could expect to see as well.
You made me smile because I have been behind the scenes at one of our local breweries here in town and saw how it works. And I want to know, like, what's happening all the time before I drink that in the future. Not that I wouldn't, but it's a great point, getting in there and seeing how these processes work, and things I don't know about glycol that they were using. How do they monitor that? So finding the industry. So I love the idea, it's a very good point about safety and things that are mandated, that we have to know what happened. So this is just going to help us being able to communicate. I'm curious because I have kind of went back and forth and talked about this over the years. So probably as long as I've known Patrick over there, the system approach, okay, and understanding the system takes a mechanical person, an electrical person. What do we need, to be able to implement or adopt these technologies into these organizations? Is it what type of personnel? What type of system do we need? Does anybody want to talk about that as far as to get started, or to maximize what we're using? What do we need?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and jump on that one, Charlie, just because, system approach, one of the things that we struggle with is understanding the correct person or correct user to go after, right? So I am covered by my OEMs, right? I sell to a pump OEM who sells to an integrator or somebody else who might sell to somebody else, then finally get to the end user. There's this game of telephone going on between all of these people. So what we need is a full understanding of what is needed at the end and how all of these systems can then interact together. And right now it's a disconnected information stream that we could really get after. And then I want to kind of go back just 1 second and kind of go on what Mo mentioned of, we got a report from NEMA, the standard maker for motors, that said only 50% of plants figure in energy efficiency when they're talking about replacing systems or new systems because that ROI. But again, that's part of this thing, the people that we need those people that understand what these systems can do and how they can benefit us in the long run, and those savings, and understand those savings from lifetimes of running these motors and pumps and systems in general, right? We need that education. We need those people that can understand that and pull that from a component level all the way through to the end user.
I love that. Mo, I can see you want to comment, right?
Yeah, I would say, I would echo what's said, and I would maybe summarize it like on a 35,000 foot level. A pump is a pump, right? But to make a pump or a motor, there is what's called the digital thread behind it, right? You have design. You got to design the best pumps and the best motors. Then you have the manufacturing process itself. And then you have the aftermarket and the services when the pump is deployed at a client. So there is a value for analytics at each stage of that thread, right? When you're manufacturing, how can you run the machines in a better way to make better pumps and better motors? And then when you're in the field, what's the business model there to ensure those pumps keep running and providing the best level of satisfaction to the end user? And at the same time, how can I take data back to the design process, which Patrick started to kind of talk about, and improve future generation designs of my pumps in order to make them better and to market them better? So I think there's always a role and thinking around analytics in a three-step process across that thread to maximize design, manufacture in a better way, and then run it to customer satisfaction in the best way.
Yeah, Mo, you made me think of something here. Who was that? I'm sorry.
It's Deepak. I just have a comment to make.
Go for it. I'll remember mine.
Sure. So I just wanted to say some of the things that you've been discussing is it's aptly applies to our business. We are looking at new technologies, and one of the in our technology roadmap, we are looking at how can we integrate sensors into the pumps, right? Today, sensors are sold as a separate item, but integrating that sensors into pumps is a technology roadmap that we want to take. But therein comes some challenges, and the first challenge that we are facing is, our first customer base, which is most of the time EPCs, they are mostly on the capex side of things. They don't want to pay anything extra for sensors that are connected to the pumps. And so they do not want this to be seen in this, and so they want to have a cheaper pump that is going to meet the need of the end customer, and they're not really worried about maintenance and all that. So, but at the same time, we talk with end users. They really want something like this built in because it gives them the intelligence that they need in order to make informed decision making. And then so there is always this conflict of, how do you meet the expectations of an OEM, as an OEM provider, how do you meet the expectations of an EPC contractor, which is different from the end user? And that is a challenge that we are faced with. And with end user, there are also challenges. Where does the data reside? Because many of these end users do not want the data to be in an external cloud because they're worried about the security of it and all that. And I wouldn't blame them, because considering the world that we are living in, there's so many cybersecurity breaches. I can really understand that. And so Flowserve has come up with solutions for that, where we are working with our customers, where we are telling them, if you have concerns about where the data resides, we have an on-prem solution where the data would be residing within their facility, not to the cloud. And obviously, there are some limitations on what we can do with that data at that point. But we are working with our customers in alleviating some of their concerns that they have. And we are coming up with solutions on both sides, which is one on-prem solution and the cloud solutions.
Thank you for that. I was about to bring up the end user perspective, I guess, with Dylan Day, who was not able to be on the panel today because he is helping someone with an outage in the oil sands market. And I want to just point out what he said, though. He talked about this digitalization being able to let us know, in advance or during or in real time, right, that this happened. This is the data. This is how we can, adjust in real time. And I think that that's the advantage to having these platforms connected, to having the ability to, go to a Flowserve and say, I need your help, right? And I think that looking at it that way. And the other thing I wanted to touch on was what you said. Basically, we all have to be on the same page. We've got to communicate. We've got to have the engineer talk to the end user, talk to the manufacturer. And so facilitating those type of things is what we need to do. Just a recent podcast with Dylan, he's talking about, please design this pump, system, where I can get my hand in there, if it's not designed where I can't get to the bolt or whatever, it's not going to be maintained correctly. So that, to Mo's point, send that information back to the designer and say, like, look, I know you told me to do it this way, but it's not going to happen because I have to be double jointed for this to work. So can you work on that for me? And real conversations, right? Having that. And so anyway, does anybody else have a question for Deepak or want to comment on that?
I have a question, Charlie.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
We had a question come in the chat, so I wanted to give it because it's similar to this conversation. So the question is, as a pump OEM, a customer response I often see, and particularly from customer mechanics who influence what gets purchased heavily on pumps, they won't buy monitoring service. I've seen it given away for pilot programs. They don't believe in it. Higher up than them, managers don't want to give information, data to OEMs. Any advice for overcoming this?
A lot of time, sorry.
Go ahead, Andrew. Yeah.
So what we kind of look at, we work with our partners as well and integrators to kind of look and see what they actually have. Because a lot of times, if you already have a SCADA system, somehow that information exists. So instead of adding something else, it's really looking at what the device can do. I mean, I know as YMEO, we sell devices that do so much, but our customers really only use 1/8 of what it can do. So the data exists. Now, taking that extra data out of it and keeping it locally is kind of what we see a lot of our customers expecting or wanting to do. And a lot of that is actually not only talking with the EPCs, because they would typically look at a specification, but talking to the customer and say, what do you guys do? Like, what do you normally do with this equipment? Half the time they rely on tribal knowledge as opposed to what the device can actually do. They're like, oh, I don't know, we could actually do that. It's a click of a button and off we go. I thought I had to add something else, not really knowing what that was because it was set up for just this one system or just this one area of analysis. So looking at that and then trying to add on top of it as to what you need to do. That's one way that we kind of find to overcome the capital investment question mark that is there a lot. Just using existing equipment. And if we can add to, or if we need to add to it, you add it in small stages. So the owners don't feel as if they're kind of breaking the bank right off the bat.
Yeah, and it reminds me of what Mo's saying about the ROI and being able to have that information. What's it going to cost? How is this going to benefit me? There's a couple things to talk about there. The security aspect, Deepak was telling us kind of this system that they I guess realize that this is a pain point for everybody. They don't want everybody having access to their data. So let's talk about that a little bit, and then I want to get into kind of those baby steps, right? Of how do you get somebody comfortable in this. But for security, let's talk about that a little bit longer. And Deepak, how did you get to that? Like, what are you using to calm people there and have access to that?
Yeah. First of all, I mean, we are not using our own proprietary cloud services. We are partnering with somebody like Microsoft in providing that cloud services. So it is a secure environment, given that we are being very upfront with them about where it is being stored and what type of data is being used. And again, this is also a process that we are taking baby steps. So some of I've also seen this happening more in the oil and gas side than other parts of the segment. And it's as we work more and more with oil and gas providers or operators, I think we can slowly get into that. We are doing some pilot projects where we are showing the level of data that this can provide, as opposed to when the data resides within the on-prem services. There is only so much we can do with that data, and the kind of we are also trying to win them by showing how we can provide the information in your fingertips, in your devices, as soon as something goes wrong, and how quickly we can get to this. And you talked about technology. We are trying to get into the prescriptive analytics part, which is not only telling them before something goes wrong, we are also doing the root cause analysis and telling them why something may be going wrong, what are some of the things, and how much time do they have before they need to take an action in order to prevent that downtime that is going to happen pretty soon. And we are trying to win them by showing them all the value that it can bring, and also giving them the confidence that it is being secured in an environment which is kept at the highest level of security. That's why in our partnership with Microsoft and other cloud service providers that are renowned, helps us win that discussion a little bit. But again, we have not conquered that. It is still a work in progress. We are slowly making our progress there.
Awesome. Gary, do you see that same? So they're heavily in oil and gas as well. But is there a contrast for water as far as security goes? I mean, for me, every time I see a water treatment plant, I see all the things and dangers that could get into our water, to be honest. But it's not really like we're trying to hide the data of, if they're profitable or not. What was your comment there, Gary?
Yeah. So we see it varies across the industry. I think in general, water is a bit of a laggard in terms of technology adoption. So there are security concerns. It really comes down to privacy for one. So it's really an educational process to explain to the utility that one, data is anonymized. So two, you can't control any of your processes remotely. Right? It's just data that's been disconnected, it's been collected. So it really comes down to educating them about, one, it's secure, and then two, everything's anonymized. They can't tie it back to any individual or customer, for example, in any of their accounts. So it really comes down to that. And over time, I think, we see more and more adoption. But in certain other industries as well, we see, oil and gas is one, power, mining, we see a lot more adoption, for example. So it's alleviating those concerns through education.
Yeah, and I think that this is just my opinion here. It seems like the ones that are, trying to make that profit or kind of paying attention to the bottom line may adopt this quicker, or for, like y'all said earlier, with the safety feature or factor, it's just too important to not have these systems in play. And how can we constantly improve, right? It's just part of that culture and changing that culture. I do want to, this was not on y'all's questions, but I did want to just comment on how, this pandemic has made us think about things differently, made us kind of look to see how we can be better connected. And, do we think that this helped the adoption of this, speed it up? Have y'all, who would like to comment on that?
Absolutely. I mean, from a connection standpoint, yes, most of the water utilities have been classified as essential, but there's not enough of them to go around and go through everything. So the communication aspect from pump station to lift station to everything else has increased dramatically. And it's not just a wireless connectivity, but also wired connectivity. And a lot of times there is a little bit of apprehension to go into a cellular aspect because the nature of the water industry, they want their data, they want it's theirs. So you see a lot of private networks being set up in different frequency bands and everything else, and those tend to be very large and also takes a long time for implementation on that aspect. So that's where it brings in other integrators. But the pandemic has helped us in the communication aspect to do a lot better and to increase our footprint and portfolio. And it's driven a lot of innovation as well on our side. Make it smaller, make it faster, and make it easier to implement. We can literally wire it up, put it inside a panel, connect it through, and it takes its programming knowledge from what's existing already from the SCADA, and you can program it all through there. That's what we've seen, at least.
I saw also Patrick kind of come off mute there, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, no, Andrew, I just kind of want to keep going with that. And the fact is, I think we kind of stepped off a cliff with the pandemic and connection, right? Where a lot of bigger companies said, oh, we don't necessarily want to work remotely. We know it's possible. We've got all of the software and stuff to do it. Well, the pandemic kind of forced us to take that dive off the cliff. And I feel like we stopped shortly after we took that step and kept running. So the other thing I want to point out with this is it's not only the pandemic this last year. We've had a record number of hurricanes come through the South, right? Charlie, you know this, I'm sure far too well.
Yes. Yep.
But what this introduces is the need for this wireless and, Gary, you mentioned it, lighten up these parts of the grid that we don't have, right? So that we can understand this when bad weather, when these natural disasters happen. If we can get response there quicker through wireless, through anything like that, I think it really opens our eyes to understand that, to get these end users to start moving down that path to understand the benefit of going to these newer technologies.
Absolutely. We kind of figured out that everything moves faster when something goes wrong. And we've seen that in a couple of municipalities where they've had to pay obscene amounts of money because just something went wrong, because of a hurricane or because of showers. And all of a sudden, a 2-year project needs to get done in 6 months. And you're like, okay, how do we do this?
Yes, I do believe it was necessity is what connected us at the beginning. Like, I have to be able to talk to people or I cannot do business. And so, it was like, okay, I guess I got to learn this Zoom technology. This is how we're going to communicate with people. And the loss of that face-to-face communication, video is the best way, right, to connect during this time. So we've done our research where we did meetups every 2 weeks and talk to people. And I do want to get into that people element, but I also want to give y'all a break. Okay. We've been on about 50 minutes. And so I'm going to give y'all a short break and I've just paused the recording and you can mute yourself or whatever. And we'll just come back at 11. And just give everybody a little short break. The chat's still going to work. So if you've been thinking about, okay, I want this question answered, now's a good time. And we'll review that. And so we'll all be back at 11 to continue this conversation. Welcome back, everybody. I am excited to be talking about the Internet of Things. Who would have thought that was something? I wanted to let y'all know that later on, I'm going to change it from speaker view to the gallery view and invite you on. So hopefully y'all will join us on camera and say hello. It'd be a great way to introduce yourself and be with us in the industry, asking questions. And so if you'll join us a little later. We do this every 2 weeks. We have these meetups. Well, it's once a month now. During the pandemic, it was every 2 weeks, and now it's once a month where we jump on a Zoom like this and have it in gallery view and get to connect with each other. So I invite you to stay around to the end to do that. Let me just look to see if my panel is back here. Yes, they are. Awesome. All right. So let's get started with some success stories. Does anybody have a success story that they can share on where, you've embraced or your client has embraced, energy management and IIoT? What does that look like for our manufacturers on here? Can you share a case study where they've implemented something in that realm that has helped a business? So let's start there. Anybody who wants to go first? Y'all can raise your hand here. No first. I got to call on somebody. Okay, I'll call on somebody. Dun, dun, dun. Andrew, go. I'm calling on. Okay, Gary, I'll call on you. Andrew, you're next. You better get ready.
Yeah, I can share a great example about Great Lakes Water Authority in Detroit. So in general, in the water industry, there's still a lot of utilities that use schedule-based maintenance, especially of all their pumps and motors. So let's focus on pumps in this case. And so Great Lakes Water Authority said, no, we want to do better than that. We want to get towards that, eventually that predictive model for condition assessment and figuring out when to service the pumps based on the actual conditions. So they put in some energy monitoring, so with some of their larger pumps and some of the pump stations, and they had these, these analytics that they created based on, here's the theoretical, for example, the pump curves. They looked at pump curves, deviation off that for energy efficiency. So looking at specific energy. So for example, kilowatt hours consumed per, X, 1,000 gallons, for example. And doing all that in a very short period of time, they created their dashboards and they set triggers in terms of boundaries when efficiency deviated. So with that small pilot that they did in a short period of time, they're saving 6% in their energy costs. And they have over 1,000 major pumping stations and so forth. So, the next step, of course, is to expand that throughout. And, they spend millions and millions of dollars a year on energy. So saving 6% is pretty good. And that's kind of what we see on average in the water industry, is at least move towards runtime hours and looking at some efficiency calculations, and you'll save anywhere from 5 to 12% is kind of what we've been seeing.
Awesome. Okay, Andrew, do you have
Sure,
one?
no problem. Right. I figured out how I can actually leave their name out as I'm talking through.
There you
go. So it's actually a very large theme park operator, and before COVID hit, energy wasn't really a big deal for them because energy in the US, at least for them, was relatively inexpensive. Everything has to keep running anyway. But the moment COVID hit and they had to close their doors and people weren't coming in, there was no source of income, energy became a huge issue for them. So going around to all of their different locations for the water system, not only drinking water, but also the wastewater, as well as all of the irrigation, because everything still has to be green. People are still sort of coming to the park, but not really. So they looked at their efficiency and they realized they really had nothing to monitor it, especially in some of the remote locations or the areas that are hard to get to. So we helped them kind of build this up with our energy monitors. We didn't put any analytics inside it because they already have a SCADA system and they want to do their own system or pull in their own data and do their own analytics behind it. But really it was helping them build the energy meter, not only measuring what's actually going on with the pump system, but also the efficiency of the pump, looking at what their phases are coming in, as well as what their wastage heat is and everything else, because sometimes those panels were sized incorrectly for what they have. So this data that they had already pulled in gave them the ability to look at that, and it gave us the ability to kind of work with them and their engineering groups a lot closer to redesign the panels for them. Most of it was through a wireless communication aspect, and because they are very protective of their data and security, so they use a private network, but wasn't on a frequency that was based on 900 megahertz. So on a frequency that no one else can see, or it's just theirs. And they went a step further for the critical systems and ended up getting a licensed frequency in order to do all this stuff. Because when you're looking at the energy monitoring, energy meters, there's really not a lot of data that goes through. It's very small bursts of it. The beauty of this was because they had a lot of these analyzers already out there, that RS-232 or older technologies be able to up-convert those into an Ethernet-based system so they can actually look at it and be in real time. And that happened. It was supposed to be a future project for them. That was about 2 years out. And they just started doing the installation of it last week. So it's, yeah, it ended up being pretty good for us.
Yeah, I'm just amazed. And I was wondering that you answered the question there, but you know, they found out in the middle of the pandemic, like, oh, we need this, and this still takes time. So being proactive, there'll be something else. So like if we can just get that message out to people to, you know, be ready for these things, and, you know, whatever step that is, we've talked about baby steps, but I think we're into the error, if that's the right way to say that, of like, you've got to do this. You've got to take a look at your systems and figure out how they're going to work in the future, even if it is, you know, a plan that you're not going to do yet. At least you have a plan. You know what it's going to look like. Does anybody else want to add some success? I see Mike.
Yeah, I'll just add one. We had a large project, and again, I'm not allowed to say their name, but they're one of the top 3 largest chemical processors in the world. Rolled out a new factory in Saudi Arabia and put a power sensor on. They had about 7,000 pumps. They put a power sensor on every single one of them, which lets them know sort of instantaneous, all right, you know, it's using power, it's slowing down, something's jammed, broken, losing flow, cavitation. It can do all that in real time, but it also serves to them all of their power consumption data for all of their pumps across their entire factory. So they can look at that and say, are these trending up, trending down, trending with our process and our flows? So it lets them, you know, back to what Gary was saying, was if you can establish a baseline of what energy you're using, then you can understand what changes happen to that over time, and are you getting better or getting worse? They've got that not only across their entire plant, but at the individual pump level. So that was obviously a great opportunity for us to work with them on, but I think it really positions them for exactly the kind of stuff that we're talking about. They don't call it Internet of Things. To them, it's just their pump network, and they've got everything instrumented and they can understand it. But that's the type of model that we see, is using your automation for making business decisions in the future and finding other uses for that data.
Yeah, would y'all agree that we need to know where we are today? Number one, like looking and finding out how much energy we use right now today, what our assets are, including our people, and what we need in the future. So Mo, I want to ask you, because you've brought up a couple of things about the business case and understanding, you know, the process and the people. And there was one more, I'll have to go back and look at it, but go ahead and talk to that, Mo, because I think that it's super important.
Yeah, absolutely. People, process, technology.
Yes.
So I fully echo what you said, Charlie, and what the team said. It's important to do an assessment. We call it a digital transformation assessment, a DTA. It depends on the size of the operation. It could be 1 day to 3 days. But it's important to understand the baseline and the maturity level around people, process, technology. So we have an approach to do that. and then to do a gap analysis, which is relative to your industry and your size and where you are, what are others doing in the field, and then to make a recommendation on a technology roadmap and also a change management procedure around it. So technology is great, but what people and processes are required to kind of back up the engagement, and then to make a recommendation on what is a proof of value that makes sense. Please notice I didn't say proof of concept, because I think with the panelists we have here today, we are way beyond concepts. And if somebody's trying to sell you a POC, please move forward. These solutions are around, they've been there, done that, they work. It's just a matter of how do you make them work in your environment. So a proof of value, simply speaking, is technology plus business case. You need the marriage of technology and business case, and you need to run it for a period of time to make sure it works. And usually these things run for about 2 to 3 months, 90 days. And if you're not achieving success within 90 days, please don't try to extend it. You know, something is not right, and you should see improvement within 90 days. So I think having an assessment and a maturity approach, and like you said, Charlie, doing a baselining and then making a recommendation to start a POV at the right place, at the right time, with the right team, and the change management behind it, and then tracking success, right? So going to the ROI now, the improvements in uptime, improvements in energy savings, whatever metrics make sense realistically for your business, you should expect to see those achievements in about 90 days.
Wow. Well, that gives us something. Patrick, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just kind of want to jump on that as well, because the thing is we need justification, right? A lot of I threw out that 50% of the plants don't think about energy efficiency, so we have to create that that knowledge to go after it. Well, there's hundreds of millions of dollars worth of rebates made available by the government, right? And so the energy companies want to save this energy. They don't want to. They know that they're going to have shortages. They're going to do this, so they're working with the DOE, with industry groups like Hydraulic Institute on how can we get this to a lower level so that they ask for the rebates and they put the rebates in their justification. NEIA, which is an energy consortium, actually just did a study. Most of the time we think about pumps, and the DOE rulemaking just came out on certain pumps. They're all variable torque or variable load pumps. We thought that was like the key demographic to go after pump wise. What the NEIA study showed was that even if it's not this drastic change in speed that you see or demand, you can still get savings by tuning these pumps to exactly what you need. Or you could go to a constant load system and still get it because you can vary it on demand using these integrated systems, these connected systems. So it's this idea of making sure everything is out there, is available, and we're educating the end users on these rebates to help them justify it, to help them bring this through, because that's what it is. Mo, you said it. It's been here a while. It's done all that. How do we make it start clicking and create that pull from us down to the end user, and how do they justify that?
I mean, I just want to clap, right? Like, that was awesome. So yeah, I think that we've got our idea of where we need to go. I think we've discovered that. There's this messaging that, I mean, y'all have done a great job of putting it, and hopefully I can capture these little nuggets and send it out. But the message to the end user, right? The message to the manufacturer to the end user, this overall message, and I'll call it marketing. I'm a marketer, own a marketing company. We're in digital media. It took us 10 years to get our industry kind of understanding that social media was important. And then, fast forward and they're like, oh yeah, now everybody's trying to do kind of things we did 10 years ago, which don't work anymore because we have new technology. And so I don't want to see that again with our, pump systems. We all need to get on the same page earlier. And so that's why, we're having these conversations. And I think messaging is important. I know in my own case is I needed to be able to educate people better. I needed to be able to have a voice that and knew what I needed to accomplish for telling people about social media. Not just, it's cool, y'all need to use it, but the why and how this can help their business, how they can save, how, like you said, and I heard from Jen, there are rebates and we can help you figure out how to get involved with this. So what as a whole, let's talk about the industry. And I think we'll go into this in our group session in a little while too, but just from our panelists, if you had that message, you're sitting down, what is it to you? What do you want it to sound like? And we can all kind of get on board with that. Big question. Who wants to go first? Just jump in there.
Well, I'll take it first, just because I think you allowed me to tee it up in the article that we did, but it's kind of, I fleshed it out through this conversation, is system understanding. If we can have a system understanding on optimizing the output, no matter what the components coming into it, if we can get that connection and understand that system as a whole, we should be able to get the most efficient output. So I think that's, I'm going to continue pushing that from a motor manufacturer's point of view out, is how can I work with my OEMs? How can I work with the end users to get them a product that connects this system to get the output that's required, and that's it, with the least amount of waste.
All right, Mike.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what I was going to say, is that as an industry, there's been a lot of consolidation in this industry, and there are a number of very vertically integrated players in this industry that are providing solutions out there. But there's also a lot of great point solutions that are best in breed, that we need to find ways that our customers can choose those and build a system that works, that's integrated, that's best of breed, that lets them choose the best products and platforms, from sensors to networking to control systems to analytics software to business software, all of that. The more that we can work together as an industry to let specialization exist in this age of consolidation, I think is only going to help our customers. So I'm 100% agreement with Gary on that.
Gary, we'll go to you. That was Patrick, but Gary, go ahead.
I think the message I like to say is, let's just get started. We talked about the technology is already there. So I think it comes down to people and culture, where let's not be satisfied with status quo, or, you hear that's how we've been doing it for the last 20 years. I think I see a lot more young professionals coming into our industry. They're used to technology. They grew up with technology. Social media has they're used to all that, right? For example, so with the technology, they want to see things in real time. They want dashboards. They're asking questions. So let's just get started, and let's identify what are those business cases in your for that customer, and then let's do something about it.
I love it. Y'all gonna have me dancing. Let's get it started. All right, Mo, let's hear from you.
It's difficult to go past all these panelists. You always position me at the end, Charlie.
I've got Andrew. Andrew's he's getting nervous right now because. Okay, go ahead.
I'm going to circle back to the beginning of the whole conversation, right? Our vision is a zero downtime operation, right? And I would say a zero energy leak operation, because if you continue running assets that are going to fail, very simply, you're going to notice that those assets are starting to eat up more energy than they should, okay? It's just physics, okay? I have a compressor, I have a motor, I have a pump. It will degrade over time. It needs maintenance. But the issue is when it does start degrading and I don't notice that degradation, and I just run it to failure because I have a PM cycle and sometimes it fails, you are using more energy than you should. So how can we work together and create a zero downtime, zero energy leak operation to support you to save cost? It's very simple. And if the justification is properly written after an assessment is done, you will be very successful in actually convincing the management team to do the work. I do have one small comment to make. It was a previous question asked by, I think the gentleman named Jamin Baker, right? he had a very tough time justifying his solution. But it made me laugh, because when things fail and I'm the OEM of the pump, my 1-800 number keeps calling, you know, help me, help me, help me, my pump failed. And I have a warranty with my customer, right? And they expect me to respond so fast. Within 2 hours, you got to come and fix my thing, and because I'm paying you warranty for it, right? So how about those companies today that have evolved their way of thinking creatively? And hey, do you want to buy my gold warranty? Do you want me to be responsive within 2 hours to you? Absolutely. But I am mandating that you have my remote monitoring solution, because then I'll be able to respond to you in 2 hours, right? So we should also think creatively how we can take those analytics and marry them with the warranties and the promises that we made to our customers. If you want me to keep my promise, you need to keep your promise, right? So that's how I see the industry evolving. Everybody talks about creative technologies, but the issue is some of it is not sellable because we are not creative and ROI based in the way that we interact with our customers.
Wow, I have chill bumps, and it is, you know, this need to say, okay, let's do it better, because that's the right thing to do. And we have it. We have the technologies. Here's what it looks like. Here's how the solution would actually work. And, you know, being gutsy enough to tell them. I like it. Okay, Andrew, your turn.
Mo thought it was hard to follow up that one. Everybody else.
Always.
I know, right? But actually, to agree with everyone else on the panel as well, Gary kind of said it best. Let's just get going. Let's start something. The hardest thing that we find in our industry, at least the guys that are in the water side, is who's going to do it first. Give me a case study. Show me this hasn't gone down. Show me what's happening. Correct. And the smaller ones, obviously, they have a little less capital, but usually it's a little bit easier to actually implement those than it is for anything else. Less data points, less geographical area, and sometimes they're a little bit more willing to take a risk. But even what we've found is ones that are not traditionally in the water side, like compressor manufacturers and things like that, precisely to Mo's point, they've looked at it going, okay, I got to warranty this thing. Now, how do I actually prove that this warranty is going? And we've got a couple of use cases for something like that as well, where they marry their warranty together with the analytics. Thankfully, it's all our stuff, so we have the full supply chain from start to finish on that aspect, so we can actually look at it and help the customer out. But yeah, that's from our standpoint, it's trying to convince people to take the risk first. Not trying to convince, I guess it's a bad word, but it's more about let's show them that we actually are a valid partner. We know what we're doing, and that we can actually interact with other companies as well. The interoperability of the different systems is key to a lot of these guys. It's how do we, these people are really good at the analytics. These guys are really good at the cloud service. These guys are really good at the hardware. But from us as manufacturers, make sure that we work together, that the customer doesn't have to go through the pains of making it all put together. Us as the OEMs or as the software providers, they're going, yes, we can do this, and we have a full solution presenting it over. And that's where consortiums like this kind of help out in the big picture.
Yeah, so I heard a lot, systems approach, having a conversation. Let's get started. Let's get this work going. Let's provide solutions for our customers and make it easy for them. I'm going to open it up since we've heard from our panelists, and I'm going to warn everybody, okay? So I'm going to change from the speaker view to the gallery view. So we're going to be able to see all of you together. You can do this too. At least I'm going to be able to see you. But in your upper right-hand corner, there's these views. And if you want to see everybody, you can click on it and go to gallery view. So that's what I'm doing. I wanted to see you guys. And I also wanted to, give Deepak, he joined us and gave us his insight this morning. And also just launched a revolutionary product here in this space. And I think it's really interesting and thank you for being here. What is the message, right? You've been all in as far as messaging. Can you tell us a little bit about your message?
Yeah, I think Mo pretty much said it really well. The message that I have for the industry is, trust your OEM. I think as we have so much of knowledge about the product, and this is our bread and butter. We know exactly what's going on with the product, and we are trying to, using all that knowledge, taking all the data that how the product operates in the field, and going to give you some insights that you are not going to get anywhere else. Nobody knows our product more than what we do know, and we are going to use that knowledge to the best effect by knowing how the process variables are changing and how the product is contributing to that. And based on that, we can tell when this product is going to, or the product is operating, how far are we from the peak efficiency point, and what can we do to improve its performance. There is so much we can do with that. Give us that data, and you will be surprised with how much of the information you can get to improve your overall process, to cross an improvement to your overall process. I think there is a lot of, as we work with operators, they feel that they know the products, and so they are taking the information and they're keeping it in-house and trying to make some decisions. But we have seen over the last few months, with all the trials that we have done, the customers have most often come back and told us, hey, we did not know that you can do so much with this data. We did not know you can catch this so much ahead of time. This has given us so many success stories that we keep hearing from these customers, and we are trying to publish those customer stories, trying to inspire others to take those actions as well. So I would say that the most important message that I would like to give to the industry is trust your OEM.
I love it. John, since you're on here with us, John Oyland, I don't know how to say your last name. You'll have to tell me. John, if you will click off mute and say hello, introduce yourself, and I would like to hear from you as well.
Yeah, good morning. So I joined this exceedingly late just because I was on other meetings and this invite kind of popped up all of a sudden on my calendar. So late in joining, but all of this stuff when it comes to motors, pumps, smart sensoring, IoT does become very important. As Mo said, it goes to the energy efficiency, but it goes also to the overall plant operations. As you're looking, everybody's trying to improve their quote unquote carbon index. So energy efficiency, energy management is very key to this. To what Andrew recently just commented here, everybody's risk averse. Okay, that's an engineer. Engineers are risk averse. It is finding the in-plant entrepreneur, forward-thinking guy that is willing to put this out and then starting the program with them. And it starts to being that assessment of what are the critical pumps versus non-critical pumps, at least to start something on that. But we are also working with, ABB, we are the smart sensoring that we have for the motors, for the pumps and the mechanical connectors to gather the data on low voltage, machines, skids, things like that, goes into the overall plant operation. It's one aspect of our IoT portfolio. We call it ability, but it's working. We're taking this to a lot of different people, and it's taking time to starting to resonate. But again, as we have more of these webinars, you get more people involved, you get more people to read, you start becoming an evangelist for all this. It will grow, and suddenly it sort of explodes. It will sort of explode on us. So we do have to be nimble and agile for that.
Thank you for joining us. And I think, it's great. I didn't really, send out the information to say, join us at any time. But I think it really is about bringing this community together. So everybody on the call is part of this. I'm thankful to my panelists who said yes and committed to 2 hours for me today. I know that's hard to do, especially in the year of Zoom. But I think this is important. I think it's important to see each other on here. That's why I brought you all into this space to see I know we have, a couple of rows here. I'm just clicking to see, if you don't have to show your face if you don't want to, but what I would say and suggest is if you have something to add here, to jump in here and offer. And this is the way that you're going to stand out to the people who care about this, right? So I'm talking to, if you're a manufacturer or you're a young professional or you're just in the industry, when you're on these type of meetings, this is where you can give your perspective and people will be like, I resonate with that person. I need to talk to that person after this. I completely agree with them, or I completely disagree with them. Let's have a conversation about that to make it better. I'm all about, putting out there the things that are controversial. I liked what Andrew said about taking a risk, and I think it's because it does feel risky. It feels scary. I mean, I had to create the Empowering Women's conference that we pushed it from October to August to try to be away from WEFTEC during their digital conference. And so we had to learn it very quickly, and we had to, embrace or emerge ourselves with learning this technology quicker than we needed to. And it's not the ideal way to do that, right? Being able to learn that and be prepared before you want it is better. But taking that risk to do it, then you knew what you messed up on. You knew how to fix it for the next time. You knew how to adapt and what resources you needed. So my experience teaches me that taking that risk and being willing to be first is, it's hard, especially hard in some of these cases, but I think it allows you to be a leader. It allows you to, help the people, help the industry along, which is super important, especially in this space. So I want to just, give the floor. One of the rules I forgot to tell you was you can interrupt Charli at any time on these calls. It's very important that because otherwise if there's silence, I'm going to be like, oh gosh, what's happening? But I want to just open the floor to see if there's any other comment about the messaging that we want to get out there, or how you see, what do you think of this energy management IIoT? Don't everybody jump out at once. Robert, woo! You're the winner. We're sending you a t-shirt.
Oh, hey, good morning. Calling in from Oregon. And so I've worked a lot with USDA and under their conservation innovation grants and stuff for more of the agriculture irrigation pumping. And we've tried to put some models together to show kind of the live efficiency of irrigation pumps. But oftentimes we have to bring in the other on-farm sensors such as soil moisture and weather. And so I've had a real challenge with kind of a platform to send this information to and everything. But, we're ranging from pumps that are anywhere from 15 horsepower to 700 horsepower. So a big range. And the other thing I was going to say is we have to be able to connect to all ages of equipment. So something that's 50 years old or something that's brand new, with variable frequency drives, without flow meters, all kinds of stuff. And so we've experimented with a handful of different types of hardware and such, but some of ours too is environmental reasons, where there's programs for irrigators that are pumping from surface water. And if the water temperature gets so high or the stream flow gets so low, they automatically shut off. And so we'll connect their pumps to a system so the local conservation district can view who's pumping and who's not, and then they get paid if they shut off. And so there's all kinds of different aspects that we're using the IoT for. Our latest project is actually, we're demonstrating some electric tractors, and we've got IoT systems going on these electric tractors to demonstrate those. But most of my work is with irrigation systems and water pumping for farms.
Who are you with, Robert?
Oh, so I work for a nonprofit called East Resource Conservation and Development out of the Dalles, Oregon.
That's awesome. So he just touched on something that I want to point out, that it's what we stand for, right? And I think when you talk about anything from climate change or improvement processes, culture change, how to be better, you have to understand that. You have to know where you stand on it. But I think that that's important, like aspect to think, okay, what does this person need to be able to educate their users, or make sure that they understand how their company works, right? Like you said, like it can't get too hot or too cold. Like this is going to mess up our process. So back to most process there and technologies on how to combine those. And I think you got to also understand what people care about. I mean, if we look at the pandemic, we understood, like in our space, when we were connecting with everybody on these videos, they just needed to chat. They actually just needed to come on here and say like, man, this is tough. And I'm just glad I get to see your face today. But looking at that from a business perspective, if you can do that, shift over and say, okay, what do they need? And that's the first step, maybe. So let's get started. Let's figure out what piece of equipment they need to know the data of, and do they have somebody on their team that can actually interpret that data, or do they need to outsource that? So Robert, I'm curious what the noise was in the background. What's going on there at your shop?
Oh, it's my dog.
That's what I thought. See, I had somebody else on the call the other day. Anyway, I had to ask.
It's usually
okay.
a dog, a pet, or a kid, one of the two.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let me see. Oh, okay. Wonderful. See, this is the thing that it makes it comfortable. So when we can talk about things like our kids or our dogs, or you're on mute, it makes everything a little bit easier to embrace. And I think that's the same thing. Like everybody's kind of using the tools. Okay, well, what do they need to be best at using the tools? So we educated people on the background. So Robert's got his background out there, and I think that's important. So how can we educate people moving forward on these technologies through not being able to see everybody at trade shows and have everything on display and let you play with it? And what's that going to look like moving forward? Okay, anybody else want to comment? Go ahead, Mo.
Yeah, very quick, Charlie. So as part of our organization, we have what's called an IIOT Academy. And our academy last year partnered with local universities here. And we actually provided or conducted an Industry 4.0 fundamentals class. It was a 7-session course, actually. It was a bit intense. There was about 70 students who are working in industry. But we ended up creating a mini-series course out of it. And it focuses on Industry 4.0 basics, from connectivity to the analytics to the business case, many of the things we talked about here, but in a more formal setting. In addition, we bring industry speakers to support the training. And I think it's important that training is not just theoretical. Having the voice of clients and people telling their journeys and stories is also value add, especially in everything that we do here. So I think my advice in general around education is, look for folks who have those types of classes, whether they're universities, like I know Purdue has something, Kettering University in Michigan has something, or, many of the folks here, maybe Flowserve, Andrew Woodmeyer and all these guys, they probably also have classes. So my suggestion is seek education, right? That makes sense for your organization. And there's a lot of avenues out there, including free stuff, actually. Udemy, I think, Udemy, they have a free Industry 4.0 class. You just go there and take a free class if you want, right?
Such a great point.
Absolutely. I mean, another thing that I guess what we do, we've done it traditionally, but it's just going to escalated in the number of application stories that we put out there, and just simple case studies. So there's a lot of that to change our website into being a product centric, into a more application centric type system. It's kind of a thing. It's a hard thing for OEMs to do. I mean, manufacturers like us go, no, we're all about the product. But really our customers are like, okay, what do I actually use this for? So that's where we started transitioning our side over to that, and offering a lot of those application notes, case studies, and free seminars. You'll see a lot of our seminars actually about non-traditional things. Like we did one, and to Robert's point about farming and the dairy industry. not traditionally strong points for the wine mirror industry as a whole, or wine mirror where we are, but it was pretty successful. And we kind of looked at that saying, farmers need to, there's a lot of money that they spend, and they need to be able to upgrade and get more information by doing less work, because there's less and less people going into farming, less helpers, and they're automating a lot more than people realize, including ourselves. So we did a little seminar about that. It's recorded off there, and we put those up there. So, look for manufacturers that have things like this. It's free and available.
Yeah, Andrew, case studies are a big player in that. Show me it. I want to see how it works. We did a thing with IoT sensors where we were having issues with vibration, and it was cool to be able to, like, hey, put these sensors on there, and then you see the vibration right there on your screen. You're like, that's happening now. You put a big rock through that crusher, didn't you? Well, were you supposed to? No. So it's one of those types of things where they start realizing what you're looking at and the capability of it by doing those case studies and just showing them live, like you mentioned, like, get hands-on if you can.
Okay, I want to ask our audience, anybody, I want to say hey to Stephen Bullen, I see you there. But I want to ask just if anybody from the audience, not panelists, has any other comments that they want to add. Now's the time. Vince, okay, go ahead. You're on mute, but let's see.
Yes. Well, I have to ask this question because, and it's probably one of the most basic questions, and you guys are way ahead of me on this. I'm just a regular guy, but I'm curious, okay? So I'm humbly asking a lot of important guys here. Okay, we've all used a cell phone, and yet we all know that in order to connect to a cell phone and charge it, you have to have the right plug connecting into the phone. I've traveled the world over, and I know that electronically speaking, you have the same challenges. You have to have an adapter if you're in the Middle East, and it's different if you're in Germany, and so forth. Everybody agree with me? Mm-hmm. So my question is, and I've seen this, I can't name the pump company, but I know that there were challenges when they built their pump in Europe, and the ohms and the voltages were different, and they conflicted with specs here. So long question, but I'm kind of boiling it down. Is anybody taking the lead on a unified approach where wherever one is across the world, the data, the ability to capture it, the method by which we capture it is unified? I mean, God, I wish I could go anywhere and just charge my phone with anybody's phone plug, but I can't even do that. So how can it be that, I mean, somebody has to be at the top and dictate, this is the kind of plug we're going to use. These are the ohms. These are the voltages. These are the methodologies. Is anybody making efforts to do that? And I'll mute now. Thank you.
I would say one word, and then the pump guys can probably say yes. Interoperability. Absolutely, Vince. Interoperability. Go ahead, guys.
Yeah, I'd kind of agree with that. I mean, there's a couple of associations that are going through this, whether you're talking about IEEE or ISA or a whole bunch of other guys, where there are boards or consortiums that say, okay, let's make this connector work with this type of system. And that's true whether you're in Europe, you're in Asia, or whether you're in the US, in the Americas. Part of that is also saying, okay, how many of these manufacturers actually know what the standards are that kind of come through it? And that's from customers going, okay, I want IEEE standard. You have to be compliant to this, right? And that's where manufacturers, because every manufacturer thinks what they come up with is the latest and greatest, and it's the best thing ever, right? It's like, no, these guys really don't know what they're doing. We're going to take it and we're going to change the world and revolutionize this. So from a manufacturing standpoint, yes, you have one that is an IEEE standard, and you have another one that is what we think the greatest, latest, and greatest. And from a sales standpoint, the one that sells the most is the one you're going to keep. The one that doesn't really sell, it kind of dies off its own death, as a normal product would. But there are devices, or sorry, systems out there that are in place. It's how much we tend to, how to say this, bend the rules a little bit to make it functional for ourselves. And I'm sure the pump guys are the same thing. Going, how much can we bend this to make sure that it's us locked in and not somebody else? But there's a plan to get to that. It's just going to take a little bit of time, and as you're saying, to make sure everyone goes through that.
Yeah, one way to get there is to kind of lead with specs, right? So you can't necessarily set a standard until you've got an understanding, or at least, you know, a majority set somewhere in the industry. So I know Hydraulic Institute is going to release this year or next year an IoT. It's not a standard, it's a guideline, and that those types of things then get input back from the industry. Then they set it. They've got a committee that's industry wide that says, okay, now we can start setting standards around what IoT is and those types of things. So they start with, you know, like you mentioned, Andrew, these industry sets, and then they start building that up. So I don't know if it's necessarily a top down, because as soon as you try doing a top down, you get a lot of pushback from the bottom up. So you can start from the bottom up and saying, hey, let's put something out to the industry, see what the feedback is, and go from there.
Yeah, I would turn my microphone on, Charlie, but the background and the snow behind me is so bright you won't see my face anyway.
Okay. Well, I know what you look like, so your voice is perfect.
Yeah. So I'll just add something, you know, from Chesterton's perspective. We entered this market space being a mechanically biased company for 135 years. We entered this space 12 months ago now, and some of the challenges. And again, you know, I appreciated the sharing of kind of what customers want, what customers see, what customers are directionally heading towards. And some of the challenges definitely that become apparent when you start talking with users and implementation and things like that is the generational change as well. You've got the maintenance guy heading towards retirement, and it's something new that's being thrust upon him. And then you've got the graduate engineers coming along who are somewhat aware of it because they don't know any different. You know, I asked my 13-year-old son what IoT was, and he went, I have no idea. And I said, well, you open the garage door with your watch. And he went, oh, you just mean like the cell phone. And that is the impression of this next generation that's going to adopt what we do today. So I think Vince's point on kind of standardization and familiarization is definitely an important one. But there's a huge, you know, a colossal education gap when you start putting apps in people's hands. Because all of a sudden that maintenance guy who's not an instrument guy, he's not a vibration specialist, you start showing him diagrams and charts he's not familiar with, he's overwhelmed and he almost rejects it. So simplification is what we've found is key to that engagement and getting things moving along. But I mean, it's been a great discussion. Ron Frizzer just pinged me the email, Charlie, and said, you might want to jump on this. So
yes, I knew he had to go. He's been coming to our meetups, and we've had this conversation there, you know, because it's relevant, right? It's what we're dealing with every day, and really what our, you know, manufacturers and service professionals, they've got to get there. They've got to jump in. They have to understand it, and we have to understand it so we can better create, you know, these conversations too. So like I said, thank you for being here. I saw your name. I'm like, oh, I've got to speak to you.
Yeah, no problem. No, like I said, appreciate having the panel and everything. It's well organized for sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, I'm good. Go ahead, Becca.
I just wanted to note something too, that I think will continue to change as the newer generations get into the workforce, is, you know, even like more layman's terms of like, your parents or your grandparents, like they get new technology and like they ask someone to teach them how to use it. Like, I don't know how to use, they get a new phone. I don't know how to use this. Show me how to use it. And they have to have someone walk them through it. But I think that, but like from my standpoint, being a millennial, like we get a new phone, like we have to relearn how to use the phone, but we just jump right in and do it. We don't ask anyone, or if we do, like it's Google.
Yes.
So I think that's going to be a cool transition to see, especially with IoT adoption becoming more of a thing, is the newer generations who aren't just waiting for someone to teach them. They're going to be the one actively hands-on learning how to do it, and then finding those resources. So I do think that that's going to be key for the manufacturers and the people moving the way, is educating those people and having those resources readily available for anyone to go out and find.
Yeah, that's definitely what we went through, Becca, with our specialists in the field. You know, we've got guys 40, 50 years service, you know, with mechanical seals, pumps, reliability. And we had to really tell them, you know, if you're working with a younger generation engineer, reliability manager, whatever it is, he's not going to be put off by you talking about the subject. He's expecting you to talk about this subject at this point. You know, and the second we made that change in our kind of communication internally, to get the guys to be more open about it, and to, you know, to share, you know, as people have done on this call, examples of successes in different situations, it really starts to snowball then. But it's that right person with, you know, eyes wide open approach that is creating the engagement then.
Yeah, and I think it's also a great point to our younger generation to be willing to help somebody learn, to take the time, you know, don't be frustrated. I mean, Mom, how can you not know how to use this by now? You know, like, it's so easy to be there because you just can't understand why they can't get it. But, you know, it comes easy. It's designed for this generation, right? The technology for today. And so, you know, I have a story real quick. I'll share. My son, who loves Iron Man, he's like 3 years old or something. And I've bought this iPad that presents up on the screen or whatever. I'm like holding it. I can't get it to work. And he walks over to it and he just holds it and it goes. And Iron Man is flying all over the place. And I was like, oh, it just works. There's nothing to push or do. It just works. And so it's understanding how that happens, and being able to explain that to, you know, somebody who's expecting maybe to be told, or expecting a button to push. No, you just swipe, you know, there's no real button on this phone. And so there's being kind, right? And being able to be that voice to others to help lead them. And then being receptive. So like Becca was saying, being receptive to learning that technology, embracing, going for it, right? We're going to learn it together. I always love, you know, I am a millennial too. I'm the first year, or last year, however you want to say that. But I saw both worlds, and I feel like I'm that connector between these two worlds. And that generation has to be willing to talk to both and be that connector. So look for those opportunities. I'm thankful for all of you. We have a very diverse group. There were supposed to be women on the panel, so nobody give me hate mail that there weren't enough women on the panel. But you know, it's about where you are in who touched my life, who had these conversations around this, and you're here, and it makes sense to bring us together like this on a regular basis. So I'm gonna click off of our gallery view back to speaker view, and I want to hear from our panelists just to close out. It's kind of final moments, and I'm gonna start with Mike.
All right, Charlie. First of all, thanks for setting this up. I think this is a really important discussion, and I think it's really important to us as an industry to find ways to find solutions for this. Our ability to work together and to deliver solutions that work not only for, you know, new environments, but existing environments. I mean, hearing Robert talk about his environment is, you know, that's just eye-opening, that we have a 50-year-old problem to solve in terms of the environments that we want to improve and make better. And it's only going to come from us continuing to talk and work together. So we think we're a great source of truth for how much power pumps are using. We'd love to work with anybody on building out architectures, building out solutions, working with particular customer problems, because we think this is going to be a really important problem to solve going forward. So I just view this as the first step in the discussion, and thanks for setting it up. I'm glad to participate.
Thank you, Mike. I am glad we had the conversation to get it started. Gary, I'll let you go next.
Sure. Thanks, Charlie. Thanks for having me on. It was great to meet all of you as well on the panel, and we had a wonderful discussion. Yeah, this is just really just the beginning. You know, where I see the future is there's so many other topics, like, you know, the whole water energy nexus, or I see a lot more sharing of data amongst communities, right? Because we really have to start looking at the entire, for example, energy or water value chain. And that means you need a lot of data. That means you do need sensors, and you need people to understand that. And then at the end of the day, really address our business issues, right, in each of our industries and sectors. But IoT, however, whatever you want to call it, you know, is here to stay. We see it and use it all the time, right? Look at our cars nowadays. You can't touch them because they're completely, they're basically software that's driving everything now. So we see a lot of that, and it's also great to hear other industries like what Robert mentioned, and in terms of agriculture, where we see a lot more, we see a lot more with our customer base as well, in all the different industries. So this is fantastic, and I'm really looking forward to, you know, working with any of you guys, you know, and it's something that we need to kind of do together, and really help educate people that are out there, and we want them to embrace it. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Gary. Okay, Andrew, it's your turn.
Sure. Thank you again, Charlie. I echo the comments from everybody else here as well. This is a great little forum put together. A whole bunch of experts in different fields, and it was a great learning as well. Like we said, you know, everyone just learned from each other, and see a best way to get to a common goal and make it easy for our customers. From a Wymeer standpoint, we're always willing to partner up and to help other manufacturers as well, you know, go into a project and help customers go through it. We kind of look at it in a way as Gary mentioned, as teaching. Whether you use our product or not, let us educate you on what the next possibilities are. Even if you don't buy anything from us within this year or next year, it's great if you do, but you know, it's more about the education process behind it. As an automation company, we find the IoT realm, or the industrial Internet of Things, a very lucrative, foreseeable business. It's still growing. The best part about it is right now, everybody's got something, but there is no clear leader. There's no clear anything. And this is the opportunity we get to build relationships and build customers as well.
Awesome. Thanks. All right, Patrick.
Yeah, Charlie, thanks for having me on. I'm glad I got to talk with everybody on the panel and the guests as well. It's just, I love getting on things like this because of the collaboration. You know, we're not focused on products. We're not focused on really on pitching our stuff or anything like that. We're focused on creating a solution, talking about it, and really making that change. My quote of the day the other day was, you can't make change by doing the same thing, right? So we're not doing the same thing. We're getting on these calls. We're making these discussions saying, hey, how do we do things differently? So I really appreciate everybody on the panel, and, you know, getting this different view from everybody on here. You know, we're gonna keep pushing new components, new higher efficiency products through. Let's all make sure we're putting them out there, having these discussions as a group, so that we get that system, that end system, the way we want to, the most efficient for everybody's good. So I really appreciate it. Thanks, Charlie.
Awesome. Thank you all. Mo had to go early, so I'll say, Mo, you know, go back and look. I'll send out the video to everybody on his comments. I loved the PPT, so y'all figure out what that is if you're new. But the process, the people, the technologies. Okay, maybe I gave it to you. It's so important, and I thank you for being here as a panelist, as an audience member, and I want to invite you. We have these meetups where similar similar to this setup where we introduce ourselves. We tell kind of what's going on with us. We look for topics to discuss. The next meetup for Empowering Brands is February the 16th at 3 o'clock Central Time. I'll send that out to all of you if you want to join us for that. Low key, you can bring your beer if you want and chill with us, but just having conversations, I think, is what is important. And we've done that today. And I'll leave you with this. The energy management and IIOT conversation is just begun, and we do need to come together and figure out that messaging, but it's a systems approach. Learn all aspects of a system, learn how we can collaborate, and don't forget that the people are also your assets in your company, and you need to make sure that you take care of their knowledge, their learning, the mental health around these new technologies. For one, it is overwhelming. We talked about that. So let's educate people. And that's a wrap, guys. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.